As I sit in my favorite New York cafe, sipping an overpriced latte and pondering the intricacies of global economics, my mind wanders to the bustling streets of Mumbai and the quiet villages of rural India. The world's most populous democracy finds itself at an economic crossroads, a juncture where the promise of rapid growth collides with the harsh realities of a complex global landscape. India, that vibrant tapestry of cultures and contradictions, has long been the darling of economic forecasters and international investors. Its potential for explosive growth has been likened to a slumbering giant, ready to awaken and reshape the global economic order. But as we delve deeper into the data and dissect the nuances of India's economic trajectory, we find a narrative far more intricate and challenging than the simplistic, rising superpower trope often peddled in Western media. The moderation of the Modi miracle. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with his charismatic blend of economic liberalism and Hindu nationalism, swept back into power earlier this year, promising to usher in a new era of prosperity for India's 1.4 billion citizens. Yet, as the dust settles from the electoral frenzy, the economic data paints a picture that's more sobering than celebratory. Friday's GDP figures, eagerly anticipated by economists and policymakers alike, are expected to show a moderation in growth to around 6.8% for the April-June quarter. While such numbers would be the envy of most developed economies, they represent a significant slowdown from the near 8% pace India was enjoying just a few quarters ago. This deceleration isn't merely a statistical blip. It's a reflection of deeper structural challenges and global headwinds that India must navigate if it hopes to realize its economic potential. As I've often argued in my columns and books, economic growth isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the hopes, dreams, and daily struggles of ordinary people. And for many Indians, particularly in the vast rural hinterlands, the promise of economic transformation remains frustratingly out of reach. The rural-urban divide, a tale of two Indias. Picture, if you will, two contrasting scenes. In the gleaming tech hubs of Bangalore or Hyderabad, young software engineers sip artisanal coffee while coding the future. Meanwhile, in a dusty village in Uttar Pradesh, a farmer anxiously scans the sky, hoping for rains that will nourish his crops and, by extension, his family's dreams of a better life. This stark dichotomy between urban and rural India has long been a defining feature of the country's economic landscape. But recent data suggests that this divide is widening, posing significant challenges to India's growth story. A Citigroup index tracking rural consumption paints a particularly grim picture, showing that spending in these areas home to about 65% of India's population has yet to recover to pre-COVID levels. This isn't just an academic concern. It's a human story of aspirations deferred and opportunities denied. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Rajesh, a small shopkeeper in a village outside Lucknow, during my last visit to India. The politicians talk of digital India and Make in India, he told me, his eyes reflecting a mix of hope and skepticism. But here, we still struggle to keep our shops open and our children in school. Rajesh's story is not unique. It's echoed in countless villages across India, where the grand narratives of economic growth often feel disconnected from daily realities. This rural-urban divide isn't just an economic issue. It's a potential powder keg of social and political discontent that could derail India's growth trajectory if left unaddressed. The consumer conundrum. Wallets closing as uncertainty grows. But it's not just rural India that's feeling the pinch. Even in the country's bustling urban centers, there are signs that the engine of consumer spending, which accounts for nearly 60% of India's GDP, is sputtering. Consumer sentiment, that elusive metric that economists obsess over and marketers chase like the Holy Grail, has been on a downward trend. For 2 consecutive months, surveys have shown a decline in consumer confidence, a worrying sign for an economy that relies heavily on domestic consumption to fuel its growth. This shift in consumer behavior isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a reflection of broader uncertainties, both domestic and global, that are causing Indians to think twice before opening their wallets. From geopolitical tensions to concerns about job security in an increasingly automated world, the average Indian consumer is navigating a complex landscape of risks and opportunities. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Priya, a young professional in Mumbai, during my last visit. 5 years ago, I would have bought a new smartphone or booked an exotic vacation without much thought. She told me over a cup of masala chai. Now, I find myself hesitating, wondering if I should save that money instead. The future just feels uncertain. Priya's sentiment is echoed in boardrooms and living rooms across India. This cautious approach to spending isn't just affecting individual households. It's creating a ripple effect through the entire economy. Businesses, sensing this shift in consumer behavior, are becoming more hesitant to invest and expand, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of economic caution. The global context, navigating choppy waters. Of course, India's economic challenges don't exist in isolation. The global economic landscape is shifting beneath our feet, presenting both opportunities and threats for emerging economies like India. The looming specter of a global economic slowdown casts a long shadow over India's growth prospects. As major economies like the United States and China grapple with their own challenges, the ripple effects are felt across the world, including in India's export-oriented sectors. Moreover, the ongoing reconfiguration of global supply chains in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical tensions presents both opportunities and risks for India. On one hand, there's potential for India to position itself as an alternative manufacturing hub to China, attracting foreign investment and boosting its Make in India initiative. On the other hand, navigating the complex web of international trade relationships and geopolitical alliances requires a delicate balancing act that could easily go awry. The policy predicament: to cut or not to cut. As these economic headwinds gather strength, all eyes are on the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, the country's central bank. The RBI finds itself in an unenviable position, caught between the Scylla of slowing growth and the Charybdis of inflationary pressures. For more than 18 months, the RBI has held steady on interest rates, resisting calls for cuts even as growth has moderated. This stance has been primarily driven by concerns over inflation, particularly the stubbornly high food prices that disproportionately affect India's poor and middle class. But as growth continues to slow and global uncertainties mount, the pressure is building for the RBI to act. Already, we're seeing major financial institutions revising their growth forecasts downward. Goldman Sachs, that bellwether of Wall Street sentiment, has trimmed its projection for India's 2023 growth to 6.7%, while Bloomberg Economics has lowered its forecast for the fiscal year through March 2025 to 6.8%. These downward revisions aren't just numbers on a page. They represent real consequences for millions of Indians. Each percentage point of GDP growth translates into jobs created or lost, investments made or deferred, and dreams realized or shattered. The RBI's dilemma is a microcosm of the broader challenges facing India's policymakers. How do you balance the need for growth with the imperative of stability? How do you address short-term pressures without compromising long-term objectives? These are questions that don't have easy answers, but they're questions that will shape India's economic future. The infrastructure imperative, building the foundations of growth. As we ponder these macro-level challenges, it's crucial not to lose sight of the fundamental building blocks of economic growth. Infrastructure, both physical and digital, remains a critical bottleneck for India's development. The Modi government has made infrastructure development a cornerstone of its economic strategy, launching ambitious projects like the Bharatmala road building program and pushing for widespread digitalization through initiatives like Digital India. These efforts are commendable, but their implementation has been uneven, and the scale of India's infrastructure needs remains daunting. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Arvind, a civil engineer working on highway projects in Gujarat. "We're making progress," he told me as we stood on a half-finished overpass, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "But for every kilometer of road we build, it feels like we need 10 more. The demand is just enormous." Arvind's observation encapsulates both the promise and the challenge of India's infrastructure push. The potential for transformation is immense, but so too are the obstacles, from land acquisition issues to financing constraints to bureaucratic red tape. Moreover, as India grapples with the existential threat of climate change, there's an urgent need to ensure that infrastructure development is sustainable and resilient. Balancing rapid growth with environmental stewardship is a challenge that will define India's, and indeed, the world's, economic future. The human capital equation, educating for tomorrow's economy. No discussion of India's economic prospects would be complete without addressing the critical issue of human capital development. India's demographic dividend, its large, young population, has long been touted as one of its greatest economic assets. But this potential advantage can quickly become a liability if India fails to equip its youth with the skills needed to thrive in the 21st century economy. The challenges are manifold. From improving the quality of primary and secondary education to expanding access to higher education, from addressing the skills mismatch in the job market to fostering a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. These are not just economic imperatives. They're social and moral ones as well. I think of Sunita, a bright-eyed 16-year-old I met in a government school in Bihar. Her dream is to become a data scientist, but the path from her rural classroom to the tech hubs of Bangalore or Hyderabad seems fraught with obstacles. "I know I need to work hard," she told me with a determination that was both inspiring and heartbreaking. "But sometimes I worry that it won't be enough." Sunita's story is a poignant reminder of both the immense potential and the daunting challenges facing India's youth. Bridging the gap between aspiration and opportunity, between potential and realization, is perhaps the most crucial task facing India's policymakers and educators. The innovation imperative, fostering a culture of creativity. As India seeks to move up the global value chain and escape the middle-income trap that has ensnared so many developing economies, fostering innovation becomes increasingly critical. The country has made strides in certain areas. Its IT services sector is world-renowned, and its space program has achieved remarkable feats on shoestring budgets. But to truly compete in the global knowledge economy, India needs to cultivate a broader and deeper culture of innovation. This means not just investing in R&D and high-tech industries, but also fostering an entrepreneurial mindset and creating an ecosystem that supports risk-taking and creativity. I'm reminded of a visit I made to a startup incubator in Pune, where I met Adifir, a young entrepreneur working on an AI-powered agricultural technology solution. "We have the brains, we have the creativity," he told me as he demonstrated his prototype. "What we need is an environment that nurtures these ideas, that allows us to fail and learn and grow." Adifir's words highlight both the promise and the challenge of fostering innovation in India. The raw talent and creativity are abundantly present, but translating that potential into world-changing innovations requires a supportive ecosystem, from venture capital funding to intellectual property protection to a regulatory environment that encourages experimentation. The path forward, navigating India's economic crossroads. As we stand at this economic crossroads, the path forward for India is neither straight nor clear. The challenges are manifold, from addressing rural-urban disparities to navigating global economic headwinds, from building world-class infrastructure to nurturing human capital and innovation. Yet, amidst these challenges, there's also cause for cautious optimism. India's democratic foundations, its young and aspirational population, its growing digital infrastructure, and its increasingly assertive role on the global stage all provide reasons to believe in the country's long-term economic potential. The key will be in how India navigates the complex interplay of domestic reforms and global engagement, of short-term pressures and long-term vision, of economic growth and social equity. It's a balancing act that will require not just sound policymaking, but also a national conversation about the kind of economy, and indeed, the kind of society that India wants to build. As I finish my now-cold latte and prepare to leave the cafe, my thoughts return to the millions of Indians, from rural farmers to urban professionals, from street vendors to tech entrepreneurs, whose daily struggles and aspirations form the beating heart of India's economy. Their stories of hope and frustration, of progress and setback, are the real narrative of India's economic journey. In the end, India's economic future will be determined not just by GDP figures or stock market indices, but by how successfully it can translate its immense potential into tangible improvements in the lives of its citizens. It's a story still being written, full of plot twists and unexpected turns. But it's a story that will undoubtedly shape not just India's future, but the future of the global economy as well. As we watch this story unfold, one thing is certain. The world ignores India's economic journey at its peril. For in the bustling streets of Mumbai and the quiet villages of Bihar, in the tech hubs of Bangalore and the factories of Gujarat, the contours of our shared economic future are being shaped, one aspiration, one innovation, one challenge at a time.